Ms. Ventura, when you were asked some questions, you talked about your music earlier you had been recording.
Yes.
Approximately how many songs did you record during your relationship with Sean?
Hundreds of songs.
What happened to the songs that you recorded?
Some of them got released, some of them got leaked on the internet prior to, a proper release, and some just didn't see the light of day.
Besides the songs that were released, did you release any additional albums when you dated Sean?
No, I put out a mixtape.
What's a mixed tape?
It was a free album, for fans that had been waiting for so long for music.
Approximately what year did you put out that mixtape?
I believe it was 2011 or 12. I'm not 100% sure.
How many albums on your record deal were not released?
9.
And what, if any, compensation did you receive if albums are not released?
You don't. You barely receive it when they are released.
What, if any, impact did not releasing albums have on you financially?
I mean, it was not released. Can you repeat again? I'm sorry.
Sure. What, if any, impact did not releasing albums have on you financially?
I mean, financially, I didn't make anything off them. But I think it was just more of you're not releasing music. You're not doing your job. So the career was kind of stifled.
Why did you not release another album during this time?
You're asking me?
Well, put another way. What were you doing instead of when you working on your music? What were you doing?
When I wasn't working on my music, I was recovering from partying. That took a big chunk out of my life. The freak-offs became a job where there was no space to do anything else but to recover and just try to feel normal again.
When you say partying, what do you mean by partying?
Staying up for days on end, taking drugs and other different substances, drinking, having sex with a stranger over days.
Does partying include what you described earlier as freak-offs?
Yeah.
Before we move on, who ultimately decided whether you could release another album?
Sean did.
How much time out of your week did freak-offs take?
It would depend on how long they were. They ranged anywhere from 36, 48 to 72 hours. I feel like the longest one ever was 4 days, maybe even more, on and off with breaks. So it was a significant part of the week.
And you also testified just a moment ago about recovering. What, if anything, were you recovering from after a freak-off?
Recovering from the drugs, dehydration, just staying awake all that time.
Miss Johnson, when you come to a good landing place, we can take our mid-afternoon break.
Your Honor, I think this is a good landing place if the court is amenable.
Thank you. Members of the jury, it's 12:20 right now. I have been informed that your lunch is here, so let's come back at 1 p.m.
All rise for the jury.
Mr. Courtroom Deputy, do we have our jury ready?
Yes, Your Honor. I believe they are ready.
Okay, all rise.
Turning to a different topic now. When you first started dating Sean, what, if any, comments would he make about your physical appearance?
Oh, well, anything from I look too Mexican with my hair like that to I needed to have my nails done a certain way. I mean, he would clown my chip nail polish and dirty sneakers. That was like a thing. But appearance was very important to him, my appearance.
How soon after you started dating Sean did he start making comments like you just described?
It was pretty immediate.
What, if anything, did Sean say about how he wanted you to dress?
It varied depending on what was going on. Some days he would want me to be really sexy and be his woman. And then other days, I could be on my tomboy looks and stuff like that. But he was just very involved in it, yeah.
You mentioned your nails earlier.
Mm-hmm.
How did Sean say he wanted your nails to look?
He preferred them to be white from the beginning of our relationship. They just always had to be done for sure, but specifically during the freak-offs, like white or French tip.
And you also mentioned how your hair was parted. How did Sean want your hair to look?
Hair? Specifically when it varied.
What were some of the things he said to you about your hair?
The biggest change was that I shaved my head around 2009 after talking about it for quite some time. But everything. The way it was styled that day, to the color, everything.
What else, if anything, did Sean say he wanted you to do with your physical appearance?
We had discussions about breast implants. We had tons of conversations about my body. And at that time, now I'm 38 years old and a woman. I didn't have much body to really talk about, and I was still developing. So there may be comments about working out or just keeping my shape a certain way when there wasn't much there to begin with.
Approximately how much time did you spend on your appearance weekly while you dated Sean?
All the time. If I wasn't doing my nails, I was getting a tan. If I wasn't getting a tan, I was doing some else. And more often than not, the physical prep was for the freak-offs. Also to be, next to him and be his girlfriend. But yeah, I had to look a certain way during the freak-offs.
Okay, we'll get back to that. How frequently did Sean comment on your appearance?
Daily.
And how common was it for Sean to make specific demands about how you looked?
It was very common.
How would you feel about the comments that Sean made about your appearance?
That also varied. He kind of critiqued a lot of people around me, other artists as well. So, it wasn't a shocker. But after a while, that wears down on you. When your confidence and your self-worth, definitely my self-worth took a hit for the entirety of the relationship. Just trying to establish who I was and who I wanted to be and who I was allowed to be.
Turning to a slightly different topic, you testified earlier that Sean paid rent for you at several residences. What else, if anything, did he pay for?
He paid for cars, clothing, things like that, trips we'd take together.
Did he ever give you money to spend?
He did, yeah.
When, if ever, did he take possessions away from you?
Oh, all the time. But that was kind of if you're not doing what I'm asking of you, or if you're out of line in any way, I'll get my car taken away. I got kicked out of my house, my apartment. I would have jewelry taken away. It was very random, depending on how he felt.
Besides, you mentioned your car, you mentioned jewelry, you mentioned your house.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else he would take away?
My self-confidence. Just physical things. But at that point, to me, the physical things didn't really matter. I really just wanted his approval.
Who would typically take these items?
Staff, I would assume.
I don't want you to assume, just...
I'm sorry.
No worries.
I shouldn't. If I wasn't there, it would have had to be a staff member or security, somebody that had access.
Objection to the speculation.
Sustained. The jury should disregard the witness's last answer.
Ms. Ventura, let me ask you some more specific questions. You mentioned the laptops were taken?
Mm-hmm.
What else, what, if any, other electronics were taken from you?
My phone.
Who took laptops or your phone from you?
They would be taken by Sean's direction. Somebody would come and take them. I don't.
Objection.
Same objection?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson, can you lay some foundation?
Sure. Ms. Ventura, did Sean ever take any electronics from you personally?
Yes.
Did anyone else ever take any electronics from you personally besides Sean?
Yes.
Who were those people?
Security.
Who from security?
Specifically?
Yes.
I know that D-Rock was the person that used to take things by direction.
Objection.
It's overruled.
How long, strike up? Would you get these items back when they were taken?
Yeah.
How long would they typically be gone for?
It depended on how long I was being punished for, I guess.
How were they returned to you?
Sean would give them back to me, as I would go to his house, and he would give them back to me.
We've talked about a few employees so far. How frequently were you in contact with Sean's employees during your relationship?
Regularly, daily.
Ms. Gavin, can you please pull up Government Exhibit 2A301 and 2A305 for identification for the parties and the court only? Ms. Ventura, starting with a photograph on the left, do you recognize that individual?
Yes.
Who is that?
Christina Coram.
And turning to the photograph on the right, do you recognize that individual?
Yes.
Who is that?
Tony Fletcher.
How do you recognize these individuals?
I was around them for several years while I dated Sean.
Who did they work for?
They worked for Sean.
Are these true and accurate photos of Christina Coram and Tony Fletcher?
Yes.
How frequently were you in Sean's residences when you dated him?
All the time.
Which, if any, of Sean's homes had safes?
They all did.
How do you know that?
Because I saw them.
And who else, to your knowledge, had access to the safe besides you?
Security. Sometimes, again, a trusted assistant.
When you say security, would that cover all the individuals whose photos we just looked at?
Yes.
How frequently did you access safes in Sean's residences?
Not super frequently, but I had access to them occasionally.
For what reason would you have access to the safes?
If Sean needed me to get money out or somebody asked me to get something out of it,
On those occasions, what, if anything, did you observe inside the safes?
I mean, there was always cash, jewelry, sometimes like tapes and SD cards from cameras, guns. Yeah, it depends on which safe.
Okay, you mentioned tapes from cameras. Are you referring to videotapes?
Yes, videotapes.
And you mentioned guns. Which residences did you see guns inside the safes?
I saw in New York, Los Angeles, and Miami, also Alpine, New Jersey.
Can you describe the size of the guns you saw inside the safes in those 4 residences?
I only ever saw handguns.
When, if ever, have you seen guns outside of Sean's safes?
A few times.
Who had the guns when you saw them outside Sean's safes?
They were just laid out by security. They were just on the table.
Do you recall an incident involving Sean and Suge Knight?
Yes.
Were Sean and Suge Knight friends or rivals?
Rivals.
Can you describe what happened?
Sean and I were having a freak off at one of his homes in LA. And I just remember we were kind of like just chilling at this point. And D-Rock came in and he said that Suge was down at Mel's Diner, which was just right down the hill. And they quickly packed up and drove down there.
What was your reaction?
I was crying. I was screaming like, please don't do anything stupid. I just was really nervous for them. I didn't know what it meant, what they were going to do.
Did they return?
They did.
Have you ever handled Sean's guns?
Handled? I've been handed, yeah, but scared.
Who handed a gun to you?
I don't know specifically who, but it was some security in the car.
Approximately when did this happen?
This happened later on in our relationship. We were going to a club hosting in downtown LA.
And what do you recall about that night?
I remember we took mushrooms and I was really like high. And I was handed the gun to just hold in my bag. But I was just freaking out the whole time that I was going to go off. I hadn't used or learned to operate a gun at that point. So
What did you do after the gun was in your bag?
at what point?
You mentioned that the gun that you were handed a gun in your bag?
Mm-hmm.
How long was it in your bag?
It was in my bag for the duration of the club visit. So like about an hour and a half.
And how did you feel while the gun was in your bag?
Just terrified. I didn't want anybody to touch me, come near me. I just stayed like sitting back.
You testified that who else was present when the gun was put in your bag?
There was a driver and security. I just don't know exactly who.
Was Sean present?
He was.
What, if anything, strike that. After you left the club, what did you do with the gun?
As soon as we got in the car, I gave it to whoever the security was, just didn't want it.
Why did you do that?
I had no idea why I had it in the first place, and I just wanted to not be holding a loaded gun if it was.
And aside from the time you just described when the gun was in your bag at the club, do you recall handling Sean's guns at any other times?
I recall handling.
Objection to Sean's guns.
I'll rephrase, Your Honor.
All right.
Aside from the time a gun was in your purse at the club, do you recall handling guns at any other times?
Yes.
Can you tell me about that?
It's a vague memory. Just, they came out here and there. The guns were taken out here and there. So just like I always felt like it was just a little bit of a scare tactic. I didn't really know for what purpose.
Where were the guns taken out from?
From the safe.
Where were the safes?
In the closet in his homes.
And whose homes were those?
Sean's.
And circling back to the Suge Knight incident, you described Sean and D-Rock packing up?
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by packing up?
I mean, it was like, I wasn't even there. They just put on a bunch of black clothes, covered up their heads, went in the safe, grabbed guns, and next thing I knew, they were in the SUV, just...
Objection to foundation and knowledge.
Miss Johnson, can you lay some foundation on knowledge?
Sure. After you saw them pack up, what did you see them do?
I saw them get dressed and leave the house.
And you mentioned they returned, is that correct?
Yes.
Approximately how long between when they left did they return?
It really wasn't that long. I couldn't imagine. It was probably like, definitely less than an hour. 30 minutes, 30, 45 tops.
I want to turn to a different topic now.
Okay.
You testified early on that Sean mentioned voyeurism to you. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes.
How did Sean describe voyeurism to you?
He described voyeurism as a fantasy that he had where he would want to see me with another male and having sexual interaction, talking. Yeah.
Okay.
He would watch.
What, if anything, did Sean say to you about swinging?
Swinging was brought up separately, and it was a lifestyle that he taught me about couples that switch partners. And, yeah, I didn't really have too much knowledge of it.
And you testified earlier that you eventually started having freak-offs with Sean. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes.
How did freak-offs that you did compare to how Sean described voyeurism to you?
Can you rephrase that?
Sure, of course. Let's talk about the freak-offs first. I think that would be easier. How soon into the relationship did Sean mention voyeurism to you?
It was within the first, 6 months to a year. It was very early.
And what, if anything, did Sean say about the identity of the other person who would be involved in the sex acts?
He said we wouldn't know them, that it would be more likely be a stranger, an escort, or a dancer.
Earlier, you testified that Sean physically hurt you in your relationship. Do you recall that testimony?
Yeah.
Relative to when Sean first started physically hurting you, did the conversation about voyeurism happen?
Relatively close together, I would say.
Which one happened first?
There was abuse first, and then the conversation after.
To be clear, the conversation about voyeurism?
Conversation about voyeurism.
What was your reaction when Sean told you about voyeurism?
I was shocked. I wasn't expecting that. I just felt really like at a loss. I didn't know how to react. I didn't want to upset him if I said that it scared me or if I said anything outside of, okay, let's try it. Because I was always just down for the things that he wanted to do. I was really nervous. Really, really nervous.
Approximately how old were you when Sean first proposed freak-offs to you?
I think I just turned 22.
And how long after Sean mentioned his interest in seeing you have sex with another man was the first freak-off?
Within the first 2 to 3 months of him telling me about it.
Why did you agree to try a freak-off?
That's a great question. I wanted to make him happy. I was in a really significantly mature relationship that I don't think I was prepared for now when I look at it. But yeah, I loved him. I didn't want him to think that I thought anything bad of him for it. I just wanted to make him happy.
Where was the first freak-off?
It was at one of the homes that he was renting in Los Angeles.
And where inside the home?
In his bedroom.
Ms. Gavin, can you pull up for identification only Government Exhibit 2A627 for the court and the parties? Ms. Ventura, do you recognize who is depicted in Government Exhibit 2A627?
Yes.
Who is that?
That is the first escort that we ever had an encounter with.
Okay, when you say encounter, do you mean a freak-off?
A freak-off, yeah.
Okay. Is this a fair and accurate photograph of the escort?
Yes.
The government offers Government Exhibit 2A627.
No objection.
It will be admitted.
Can you please publish that for the jury, Ms. Gavin? Ms. Ventura, do you know the name of the individual depicted in Government Exhibit 2A627?
I don't remember.
If I refer to him as the first escort, will you know who I'm talking about?
Yes.
What did you understand his occupation to be?
I understood him to be a dancer, a stripper in Vegas, I think.
At this first freak-off, are you aware if the first escort was paid?
Yeah, he was paid.
What was he paid to do?
He was paid to entertain, to dance, and to have intercourse with me.
Who arranged the first escort to be present at the first freak-off?
Sean did.
What, if any, drugs did you take at the first freak-off?
We took ecstasy and drank alcohol.
And earlier you testified that ecstasy is a pressed pill, is that right?
Yes.
Was there any particular kind of ecstasy you took at the first freak-off?
Those were the blue dolphins that I spoke about earlier.
The same pills from Miami?
Yeah.
At what point in the freak-off did you first take the ecstasy?
Before anything started.
Who provided the ecstasy to you?
Sean.
What did you wear at the first freak-off?
Specifically, I don't know exactly, but it was definitely an outfit from a sex store, Hustler, or something with some really high platform shoes, dancing shoes.
What, if anything, did you do to disguise your appearance?
On the first meeting, Sean told me that we would wear masks, so I wore a masquerade mask, and
You described the really tall platform heels. Who, if anyone, told you to wear those heels?
Sean did.
Can you please describe what happened at the first freak-off?
After we took the drugs, he had a conversation. Sean had a conversation with the dancer. And then shortly after, he came down to the room and performed and stood in the doorway and danced for a little while I just watched and while Sean watched us.
What happened next?
It was just a gradual, I should say every freak-off was like directed by Sean. Like he knew specifically where he wanted everyone to be, the lighting and such. So over that first session, we just kind of like ended up getting closer and closer and talking to each other, and then eventually had to put oil on each other. Yeah.
You used the word session. What do you mean by session?
A session in a freak-off would be like one full time, with the escort until basically they finished. They ejaculated.
Would a session include all of the sex acts that led up to ejaculation?
Yeah, it would be pretty standard, yeah.
Do you recall how many sessions you had with the first escort at the first freak-off?
I believe we had at least 2.
And you testified earlier that the first escort was paid. How were you aware that he was paid?
I knew because Sean told me
What, if anything, did Sean say to you about paying the escort?
that he had to go pay him, and he went and paid him.
Approximately how much, if you know, was the escort paid?
I don't know specifically, I just know that escorts were paid in the thousands.
After this first freak-off, how did you feel?
Well, I was high, so there wasn't too much feeling. I think it was a mixture of dirty and confusion with like, okay, he's really happy with me and I did something right, so just really confusing. I didn't know what was going to happen after that. I didn't know if we were going to be doing it more frequently because I was willing to. I didn't know. So,
What, if anything, did you tell Sean about how you felt about the first freak-off?
I honestly don't remember.
Did there come a time when Sean proposed another freak-off?
Yes.
How soon after?
It was pretty soon after, within weeks.
How would you respond?
It was the same nervousness feeling, like, what am I going to do? I can't say no, like I've already done it. And ultimately I said yes.
Why did you feel you couldn't say no?
Just didn't want to make him upset. I didn't want to make him upset. I didn't want to make him angry and regret having told me about his experience that was so personal. His trust meant a lot to me at that point.
What concerns, if any, did you have about Sean becoming upset with you?
There were concerns.
Objection leading.
Grounds? Did you say leading?
Yes.
That's overruled.
Ms. Ventura, do you want me to re-ask the question?
Please.
You testify that you were concerned that Sean might be upset with you?
Yeah.
What concerns, if any, did you have if Sean was upset with you?
His anger, really. his mood changed, like what that was going to do to the rest of the day, and just how he felt about me and our relationship. So it could be different things.
How frequently did you have freak-offs with Sean after they started?
After they started, they became almost weekly, I would say.
And how, if at all, did that frequency change over time?
It became more, depending on if we were spending time with each other, it would become less, but it was weekly for a consistent amount of years.
And approximately what year was the last freak-off?
The final freak-off? 2017, 2018.
And you testified earlier that the approximate duration of a freak-off was, I think, like 2 to 3 days. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes.
Is that accurate?
Yes.
How long were you awake during the freak-offs?
The whole time.
Did you get any sleep?
No.
Did you want any sleep?
Yes.
How did you stay awake the whole time?
The drugs honestly helped.
What kind of drugs kept you awake?
Well, ecstasy and Molly for sure. We started to do other drugs like cocaine later on.
Who gave the ecstasy?
Sean.
Who gave the Molly?
Sean.
Who gave you the cocaine?
Sean.
You testified earlier that the longest freak-off was 4 days. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes.
Who decided when a freak-off was over?
I mean, ultimately it would be Sean. Discuss it and say this is the last one, and then hopefully that would be the last one.
And when you say the last one, are you referring to a session?
To a session, yes.
Between when the freak-offs started and when they ended in approximately 2017 or 2018, do you recall every freak-off you participated in?
No, that would be impossible.
What are some of the reasons that would be impossible?
The frequency, the drug use, it was crazy times.
In that same time period, did you want to engage in every freak-off that you participated in?
No.
Why is that?
I just felt like it was all I was good for to him. I just felt pretty horrible about myself. I felt disgusting. I was humiliated. I didn't have those words to put together at the time, how horrible I really felt. And I couldn't talk to anybody about it. So.
You testified a few moments ago that you did freak-offs because you did not want to make Sean angry.
Yeah.
During your relationship, what did Sean do when he was angry?
He would be violent with me. His look would just change over. He would just become a different person and just didn't know what was going to happen.
When you say his look would change over, what do you mean by that?
The best way for me to describe it is his eyes would go black. It's the version of him that I was in love with was no longer there.
Were there any parts of freak-offs that you enjoyed?
The time spent with him.
And what about the time spent with him did you enjoy?
Just, at the time, I'm sorry. Just the one-on-one time I would get, because there were always so many people around, and I didn't feel very close to him. So, as sad as it was, I thought that, it was the only time I could get.
And when you said the only time you could get, are you referring to the freak-offs?
Yeah, yes.
And specifically, are you referring to the one-on-one time with Sean?
Yes.
Okay. What, if any, discussions did you have with Sean about not wanting to participate in freak-offs?
I definitely brought it up, but gently, because I didn't want to upset him or make him angry with me for even sharing it, but I just treaded lightly when I would bring it up. Sometimes I would email him about it, I didn't want to. I just didn't want anything bad to happen.
When you say you didn't want anything bad to happen, what did you mean by bad?
I mean anything bad could be him being violent, but also just him saying, okay, well, I'll find somebody else to do it with. When you really care about somebody and you're in love with them, you don't want to disappoint them. So.
When you would talk to Sean about how you were feeling, how much of your concerns were you able to express to him?
Objection leading.
Maybe you can rephrase.
Sure. Miss Ventura, you said earlier that you would talk to Sean gently about how you were feeling. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Why would you talk to him gently?
I just never wanted him to feel like I judged him for it. But I wanted him to know that, this made me feel doing this made me feel horrible. It made me feel worthless, that I didn't have anything else to offer him.
How would he respond when you would say things to him like this?
He was pretty dismissive. I find that I expressed myself quite a bit, and it just kind of went like he didn't really care, like it was unheard.
Objection.
Grounds?
Speculating about whether or not he really cared.
That's overruled.
Ms. Ventura, you said Sean was dismissive.
Yes.
When you expressed these concerns, what did he do?
I'm sorry?
It's okay. You testified that Sean was dismissive. Do you remember that?
Yes.
What would he say to you when you expressed concerns?
He would call me predictable. He would be like, I know you don't want to do freak offs anymore. I already know what you're thinking. At that point, I would try to backpedal and say, no, I was predictable.
How frequently would this happen?
Frequently enough, yeah. I said it more than once, more than a handful of times.
Ms. Ventura, Ms. Gavin, can you please pull up for identification for the parties and the court-only government exhibits 3A107? Ms. Ventura, do you recognize what this document is?
Yes.
What is it?
It's an email between me and Sean.
How do you recognize it?
Our names.
And is this a true and accurate communication between you and Sean?
Yes.
The government would offer Government Exhibit 3A117 at this time pursuant to the stipulation in Government Exhibit 1302, Paragraph 1.
No objection.
All right, it will be admitted.
Ms. Gavin, could you please publish to the jury if it's possible to put page 1 and page 2 side by side? Ms. Ventura, I'm going to direct you to the very bottom communication on page 2. Do you see where that is?
Yes.
Okay, who is that communication from?
At the very bottom is from me.
Okay, the name says BG New Pin.
Yeah, baby girl was the name I was called.
Is baby girl a name Sean called you?
Yes.
Who was this communication to?
This was to Pop Pop.
Who is Pop Pop?
Sean.
Why did you call Sean Pop Pop?
There was a period early on in our relationship where he wanted me to have a nickname for him, but I didn't want to call him anything that anyone else had called him. So he asked me what I called my grandfather, and I said Pop Pop.
How did you feel about calling Sean the same name you called your grandfather?
I thought it was weird at the time, and now I just feel like it was disrespectful.
What's the date of the first message?
April 19th, 2010.
Okay, one more question about nicknames for you. Besides baby girl, are there any other nicknames that Sean had for you?
He called me Cece.
What does CC stand for?
Cassie Combs.
In this first message, what is the subject line?
It says, I really need to...
Who sent the email?
I did.
How did Sean respond to your message in the next communication?
He says, so who are you gonna... Want to call someone?
What is your understanding of what wanna call someone is referencing?
Want to call someone is like, want to call an escort for a freak off?
And when you sent the communication, I really need to... Why did you send that?
Because I wanted to be with him, and that was my way of saying it.
And when you said you wanted to be with him, are you referring to Sean?
Sean specifically, yes.
During your relationship with Sean, who did you want to have sex with?
I wanted to have sex with him.
Did you want to have sex with the escorts?
No.
So turning now, Ms. Gavin, we can take that down. If you could blow up the bottom communications on page 1. So directing your attention to the first communication, your response. What do you respond to Sean saying, want to call someone?
I say, I want you. Are you crazy?
Why do you respond that way?
Because that's exactly how I felt, and I didn't want to call anyone.
So Ms. Gavin, if you could take that down. So starting from that point, I'm going to read Sean's messages, and you'll read your messages through to the end.
Okay. So, just joking. I want to talk to you about something tomorrow. Going to sleep. Love you. Is it going to stress me out? What is it about? Freak off. It can wait. It's not a big deal. Now you don't want to do it anymore? Oh, I already know. You're so predictable. Really? Okay. Since that's definitely what it was, we'll leave it at that then, since I'm so predictable. Have a good night. Whatever, baby. I'm not going to play no games with you, and you ain't going to keep shutting me down. I'm not shutting you down, I never do. If anything, it's always the other way around. I wasn't going to say I didn't want to do it anymore. What were you going to say?
So directing your attention to Sean's message in about the middle of the page, saying, now you don't want to do anymore. What do you understand him to be referring to in that message?
That he knew I didn't want to do the freak-offs anymore.
And how did you react after Sean sent this message where he said, now you don't want to do anymore? I already know, you're so predictable.
I mean, I tried to backpedal. I said, yeah, okay, since that definitely is what it was, just kind of playing it off or trying to.
Why would you backpedal in situations like this?
Because I didn't want to make him angry. Like,
directing your attention to, I'm sorry, Ms. Gavin, can you take that down? The top, if you can blow up the top, please, the first two. Directing your attention to the end of your message here where you said, I wasn't going to say I didn't want to do it anymore. Do you see that?
yes.
Is that accurate?
Accurately how I felt?
Yes.
No.
Why did you say that if it wasn't how you felt?
Just didn't. I really didn't want to make him think I didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want him to be upset or not trust me.
You said you didn't want him to be upset. During your relationship, what did Sean do when he was upset?
He would be a scary person. He could be violent. Or also just somehow figure out how to make it happen anyway, no matter how uncomfortable it made me.
When you say make it happen anyway, what does that refer to?
The freak-off.
Okay. Ms. Gavin, can you take down this exhibit? Ms. Ventura, turning back to the freak-offs, in the beginning, was Sean open at the freak-offs about his true identity?
He was not.
How, if at all, did he disguise his identity?
Well, he started with the masquerade masks. Sometimes he would wear a hat or something covering his face.
Were you open about your true identity?
I was not either.
And what, if anything, did you do to hide your identity?
The same thing as far as the mask. I would wear wigs.
Who asked you to wear a wig?
Sean.
Who asked you to wear a mask?
Sean.
Over the period of time that you did freak-offs with Sean, did you always wear wigs and masks?
No, not always.
How did that change?
Eventually, I don't think it was too difficult to figure out who he was because he would talk. But eventually, just be comfortable enough with the escort or person that was there to just remove the coverings.
Beside the wig and mask, what other clothes would you wear for freak-offs?
Always super see-through netting outfit. It varied. Just sexy outfit from a sex store.
What are some of the stores you would buy outfits at?
In LA, there's a store called Pleasure Chest, Hustler on Sunset. Here in the city, there's just little shops everywhere.
In addition to the outfit you described, did you wear shoes?
I did every time, yeah.
What kind of shoes?
The Lucite stripper dance shoes, yeah.
What kind of heels do those shoes have?
Extremely high heels.
Who decided what you would wear to freak-offs?
I would purchase outfits and show Sean and see what he liked best.
Would you wear the outfit that Sean selected?
Yep.
And with respect to the high heels you talked about, for how long would you wear those high heels during the freak-off?
I would wear them throughout. If there was a break, I might take them off, but yeah, throughout.
What conversations, if any, did you have with Sean about preparing your physical appearance for a freak-off?
He would just ask me did you get a wax? Are your nails done? Do you have a tan? Just basic list.
How long did it take to prepare your physical appearance for a freak-off?
It could take all of that daytime.
Would that be taken up by things you mentioned, like getting your nails done, getting a wax, getting a tan?
Getting supplies, everything, yeah.
What, if any, body piercings did you have while you were dating Sean?
I had my nipples pierced, and prior to way back, I had my belly button pierced and a hood piercing.
Okay, so starting with the nipple piercing, when did you get the nipple piercing?
I initially got one with a friend and took it out. This was early on in LA. I just took it out. And then he made a suggestion that I do both, so the next week I went and did both, yeah.
When you say he made a suggestion that you do both, who is he?
Sean.
And what does both refer to?
Both nipples.
Did you want to pierce both nipples?
At the time, I think I did. I took the initial one out because of the pain, but I thought it looked cool.
And you mentioned a hood piercing?
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
It's a piercing that like basically sits on your clitoris.
And when did you get that piercing?
I got that shortly after the nipple piercings.
Why did you get that piercing?
Sean's suggestion. He actually came with me, yeah?
Earlier, you testified that the first freak-off was at Sean's house. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes.
Were there other freak-offs at his house?
Yes, there were others.
Which of his homes did you have freak-offs in?
I would say mostly all of them, except for Mapleton.
Does that include his home in Miami?
Yes.
Does that include his apartment in New York City?
Yes.
And besides his home, what, if any, other homes did you have freak-offs at?
In my apartments, my homes.
Which of your homes did you have freak-offs at?
I think all of them, except for the Studio City house.
So does that include the West End address in New York?
Yes.
Does that include 818 Doheny?
Yes.
Does that include 875 Comstock?
Yes.
And besides homes and apartments, at what other locations did freak-offs occur?
Hotels mostly.
And in what cities did you have freak-offs with Sean and a male escort?
New York, Miami, Los Angeles, Atlanta, Ibiza, Spain, Turks and Caicos, random places.
What about Las Vegas?
Vegas as well.
So going through, you mentioned New York City. What are some of the hotels that you had freak-offs at in New York?
New York would be the London, Trump Hotel, Gramercy. Honestly, you name it, we probably did it there.
What about the Intercontinental Hotel?
44th Street, yeah.
In LA, what are some of the hotels you had freak-offs?
L'Hermitage was frequent, Beverly Hills Hotel, the London there as well. Shutters on the Beach, there's, where else? Other places.
What about the Intercontinental in LA?
Century City, thank you, yeah.
And in Miami, what are some of the hotels where you had freak-offs?
Mandarin Oriental, Satai, Fontainebleau, the One Hotel, yeah.
What types of rooms were freak-offs usually held in?
They were usually held in like a room that had a living room that you could close the door, or like an extra room with an additional bathroom, so like a small suite, junior suite.
Who, if you know, booked the hotel rooms?
It varied. Sometimes it was someone like Tony Fletcher on staff. Occasionally I would book hotel rooms. Yeah.
Who, if you know, paid for the hotel rooms?
I believe Sean paid for the hotel rooms.
What are some of the names that were used on hotel reservations?
Jackie Starr was the name that I used. Frank Black, Frank White, there were all types of names.
Turning to Jackie Starr, why did you use the name Jackie Starr?
That was a name that, I don't know who came up with it, if it was him or me. That I used to actually book dancers, so I would use that name instead of my own name, and then just started using it as a hotel room name.
And you also mentioned Frank White and Frank Black?
Mm-hmm.
Whose aliases were Frank White or Frank Black?
They were Sean's.
What, if any, supplies were needed for freak-offs?
Main supplies were baby oil, Astroglide, lubricants, and condoms.
Who typically brought the supplies to freak-offs?
More often than not, it was staff. The room was usually stocked by the time we got there. If not, if it were a last-minute situation and I set it up, I would get the things, or sometimes Sean would bring them.
When you say staff, whose staff are you referring to?
Sean's staff.
Which positions on Sean's staff would be tasked with stocking the hotel rooms?
Assistant, security.
You mentioned baby oil. What brand of baby oil was used?
Johnson's baby oil.
How was the baby oil used during the freak-off?
It was just as important as everything else as being there. We used it quite a bit.
Where was it? Where was the baby oil placed?
We poured it all over our bodies. Had to be glistening, yeah?
What participants in the freak-off, if any, used the baby oil?
Everyone.
Would that include you?
Yes.
Does that include the escort?
Yes.
Did that include Sean?
Yes.
What temperature was the baby oil when it was poured on your body?
It was always heated. And keep the cap on, put it in the sink with hot water, and let it warm up.
Who wanted the baby oil to be heated?
Sean.
You mentioned that the baby oil was used because you had to be glistening?
Mm-hmm.
Who told you that you needed to be glistening?
Sean, it was his preference.
How frequently would baby oil be applied to be glistening?
like every 5 minutes. It was a lot.
What, if any, comments would Sean make about needing to apply baby oil?
He would, if he felt like you were too dry, he would let you know.
What would he say?
He would say, "You're too dry. You need to put more oil on," or "You need to be glistening. You need to be, you need to be shining." Yeah.
Who directed the application of baby oil during freak-offs?
I would say that was heavily on Sean. Occasionally, I would say that we needed more too because I just knew what to do.
Why did you know what to do?
It was a very choreographed experience.
Who choreographed the experience?
Sean.
During the freak-offs, who applied baby oil to you?
I applied it to myself, sometimes Sean, sometimes the escort,
Would you apply baby oil to anyone?
sometimes with the escort, sometimes to Sean.
How did you usually apply baby oil?
You just squirt it on out of the bottle.
Were there other ways of applying oil at a freak-off?
There was one time where I got to, I think it was at Le Mirage in Beverly Hills, and there was a pool, like a blow-up pool, and it was filled with lube and oil, so that was a different way.
When there was a blow-up pool that was filled with lube and oil, what did you do with the pool?
I don't know what happened with the pool, honestly.
I'm sorry, strike that. When there was a pool and oil, did you get into the pool?
I did, with my outfit, my shoes. It was quite dangerous.
Who, if anyone, asked you to get into the pool?
Sean, it was his idea.
Did you want to get into a pool of baby oil?
No, especially not in a hotel room like that. It was such a mess. It was like, what are we doing? Yeah.
Why did you get into the pool with baby oil?
At that point, I couldn't say no. It would have been all bad. Where I don't. When you say all bad, what do you mean?
Objection calls for speculation.
Your Honor, the witness just used...
I think just the verbiage is a little vague. I think you can ask a more focused question and you'll get a response.
Sure. You testified that if you did not get into the pool with baby oil, that it would be bad.
Yeah.
What concerns did you have about not getting into the pool with baby oil?
That, amongst other things, just his temper. If that was something that he wanted, Sean wanted to happen, that's what was going to happen. There wasn't another way around it.
Approximately how many bottles of baby oil would be used in a typical freak-off?
A lot. I would say definitely somewhere close to 10.
What size were those bottles?
The larger size bottles.
Were there freak-offs where you ran out of baby oil?
Objection, Your Honor, at this point is getting a little cumulative.
Let's see if we can wrap this up and move on.
You mentioned Astroglide. How was that used at the freak-off?
Same objection, irrelevant.
Your Honor, it's a supply.
Sidebar. Miss Johnson, maybe you could help us with where we're going right now. I think the objection is grounded in lack of relevance and also the cumulative nature of the questioning. Am I right about that?
That's right.
Maybe if you can give us some guidance as to where we're going next, that will be helpful.
Yes, Your Honor. We are going to go through the various supplies that were used because those are supplies that were demanded by the defendant, that were at every freak-off, that were consistent, which showed a pattern, which showed how he controlled the events that happened at these freak-offs. I will not ask any more oil questions. I have one more question on lubricant, but I'm going to march through the different supplies that were present.
That's fine. I understood the objection to be mainly on the cumulative nature of this. I think we had about 20 questions on baby oil issues, and I think we can condense that a little bit, and you'll avoid the objection. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Mr. Agnifilo?
I was going to say slippery slope, but I'm not going to say it.
Miss Johnson, you may proceed.
When we were just talking about Astroglide, how was the Astroglide used at freak-offs?
As a lubricant.
With respect to those two supplies, baby oil or Astroglide, were there times when you ran out of them?
Yes.
What would happen when you ran out?
When we would run out, we would have to either call somebody, staff to bring it, or ask the bell desk and give them a tip.
When you say staff, whose staff are you talking about?
Sean's staff.
Which members of Sean's staff would resupply the hotel rooms?
Assistants, usually.
Who would call the staff members?
Sean would advise me, or he would call himself.
And you also mentioned calling the bell desk. Who would call the bell desk?
Again, either me or him.
If you called, at whose direction would you be calling?
Sean's.
Initially, what kind of lighting was used for freak-offs?
Initially, it was candlelit, so various candles.
Who decided what kind of lighting would be used?
Sean.
What type of candles were used?
At a time, just really strong smelling candles, like Glade or Diptyque. Any just really strong smelling.
Who would typically bring the candles to the freak-offs?
It was all part of the setup, so whether it was an assistant, or me, or him.
Approximately how many candles were used?
Approximately 6 to 10.
How were the candles placed in the room?
They were placed so that Sean could see me and the escort in the candlelight.
Who requested the candle setup?
Sean.
Besides lighting, were there any other uses of candle wax at freak-offs?
A couple of times where it was poured on the body, but it wasn't common.
When you say poured on the body, whose body was it poured on?
My own or Sean's.
And whose decision was it to pour wax on either your body or Sean's body?
Sean's.
Did the lighting that was used in freak-offs change over time?
Yes, there were lights after a certain point, like the lights that we would use in a studio.
Can you describe what the light you would use in the studio is?
There were multicolored lights that changed with the music, kind of like a club light.
What colors are those lights?
Red, green, blue, purple.
Who made the decision to change the lighting?
Sean would have assistants bring the lights, so I guess him.
Ms. Gavin, can you pull up for identification Government Exhibit 3Q118 for the parties and the court only? Ms. Ventura, do you recognize who's in this photograph?
Yes.
At what type of location is this photograph taken?
To me, it looks like a hotel. It looks like the London Hotel in New York.
Who took this photograph?
I believe I did.
Is this a true and accurate photograph of Sean?
Yes. The government offers Government Exhibit 3Q118.
No objection.
It will be admitted.
Ms. Gavin, can you please publish Government Exhibit 3Q118 to the jury? Ms. Ventura, directing your attention to Sean's hand, what is he holding?
He's holding cash.
How do you describe the color of the room?
It's red from the studio light.
Is the studio lighting you described earlier responsible for the red color?
Yeah.
You can take that down, Ms. Gavin. What temperature were the rooms where the freak-offs were held?
They were usually pretty warm.
Who set the temperature?
Sean.
And you described that the candles were strong. How did the rooms smell during freak-offs?
I mean, if it were a Glade candle and a bunch of them, Angel Whispers, if anybody knows what that smells like, just on 10, it was super pungent and strong mixed with oil and just all of the other scents.
What other scents were there?
I mean, it was warm, so body odor, you know?
After a freak-off, can you describe the condition of the room where the freak-off was held?
The room was usually pretty bad off. There was oil all over the walls, the door handles, the bed, the sheets. We often would get to the room. I would need to call and ask for extra linens and towels and stuff like that to try to mitigate these problems. But oil, candle wax all over the place.
You mentioned you would call for extra linens. When would you do that?
Prior to starting.
Why would you call for extra linens?
To cover up the furniture that was there, to try to protect it.
You described wax and oil damage. What, if anything else, was soiling the linens?
Sometimes blood, urine.
So starting with blood, how would blood get on the linens at freak-offs?
I was expected to have freak-offs on my period.
Who expected you to do freak-offs on your period?
Sean.
Did you want to do freak-offs on your period?
No, I don't think anybody really wants to do that.
Before leaving the hotel, what, if anything, did you do to clean up the linens you described?
I mean, there really wasn't too much you could do but give a good tip and hope they would help out. I would just try to clean up what I could. Usually like an assistant or staff or somebody would come, I believe, after.
Are you aware if hotels charged for damage to the rooms?
I am.
How do you know that?
Through conversations with the staff that got a call from the hotel, I remember specifically like a number that was crazy. It was having to redecorate the room. It was a really high number to fix it.
Are you aware which hotel charged that really high number?
That was the Intercontinental in New York.
Do you remember the person that I referred to as the first escort?
Yeah.
Were there other escorts that you used besides the first escort?
Yes.
And after the first escort, who typically found escorts for freak-offs?
I was put on the task to find escorts.
And who, if anyone, put you on that task?
Sean did.
What, if any, requirements, physical or otherwise, did Sean have for escorts?
At first, it was very specific that he wanted a black male with a large penis, but eventually it just kind of became whatever's available.
Where did you find escorts to hire?
When it became really consistent, we had found an escort service called Cowboys for Angels, and they have escorts in like all the major cities in the US.
Before using Cowboys for Angels, how did you find escorts?
Initially Craigslist or Backpage or whatever.
What is Craigslist?
Craigslist is the website where you can put up ads and sell your bed and other things. It's just where you can place ads.
Besides placing ads, can you also respond to ads?
You can also respond to ads.
Did you post any ads to Craigslist?
No,
Did you respond to ads?
I did.
At whose direction did you respond to ads?
At Sean's direction. He told me what to look for.
Your Honor, I'm not sure when the court was planning on taking a break this afternoon.
I was planning on doing it at 3 o'clock. But if this is a good place, we can take it now.
I think it would be a good place.
Thank you, members of the jury. As always, do not talk to each other about the case, and we'll have some further instructions at the end of the day. We'll be back at 3 p.m. All rise.